Welcome to our Reversing on Plants podcast, where we talk all things about reversing type 2 diabetes with a plant-based diet. You're going to be joined by me, a registered dietitian who helps people reverse type 2 diabetes with plant-based eating, and also Galia, who is a health coach and a certified personal trainer who is passionate about helping people living with diabetes. So thank you so much for listening in, and let's get started. Hi everyone, my name is Charmaine and I'm the registered dietitian that helps people reverse type 2 diabetes, and this is my lovely program coach Galia, and Galia can say hi to everyone.
Hi everyone, this is Galia here, and I'm super excited to be with you all today and to just be talking about some really cool stuff.
Amazing. We are on our third podcast episode. I am super excited, and I'm definitely grateful for every one of you's support to our podcast. We're just starting this. It's fun for us, and thank you so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. And what are we talking about today, Galia?
So today we are going to be kind of touching on the difference between a vegan diet, a plant-based diet, and to just kind of be going back and forth with each other, talking about these different kind of lifestyles. What purpose does one serve, or what could you achieve on one of these kind of lifestyles? And yeah, so I think we can just get straight into it if you're happy with the first question.
Yeah, let's do it.
So first question, and I think this is a really great starting point for us so we can all kind of be here on the same playing field. So what is the difference between a vegan diet and a plant-based diet, or a whole food plant-based diet, and even a low-fat whole food plant-based diet? So many diets, but if you could just run us through some of the major differences between those.
Yeah, absolutely. So with a vegan diet, it's strictly meaning that there's no animal products involved, no meat, dairy, eggs. Even some people don't do honey when it comes to a vegan diet, but it strictly means that no food is produced by an animal in a vegan diet. But think of plant-based as a term that's kind of broad. So plant-based is a broad umbrella that includes vegan diets, vegetarian diets. Vegetarian diets are diets that still include dairy and eggs. It even includes pescatarian diet, where people just eat fish, and other than that, mostly plant-based. So plant-based diet really just means that your diet is based on plants. So think of it as that. It's not really like a strict term, and I know it'd be kind of confusing when I talk about plant-based, but I just use the word plant-based because I think with a plant-based diet, it has a more emphasis on making your meals mostly based on plants, and that's what I believe in. And of course, I believe in a whole foods plant-based diet as well that helps people, reverse their insulin resistance and is more healthful in that way. But with a plant-based diet, I would say even if someone says they've been plant-based for life, that could mean that, they've been vegetarian for life, they've been pescatarian for life, doesn't necessarily mean that they've been vegan for life. So plant-based is more of a general term, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something I want to throw into the mix there as well, because I don't know if this was just me that is not in the know here about this, but this was something that when I learned, I was I think I would say pretty shocked, because I didn't know that veganism encompassed so many different things. And I think this is where a lot of people, struggle to make that distinction. One of the things, as you know, that we get all the time from people is saying, oh, I could never become vegan. And I'm I hear that. I think becoming vegan can be really difficult, right? And it's because of those ethical reasons behind it. When someone becomes plant-based, it's usually more so because of health, not because of the ethical side necessarily. But I didn't know that veganism extended, to the clothes you wear, the toiletries, the makeup you use, right? It's no leather, no animal tested makeup or products. And it's so much bigger than just the food. I mean, for me, I don't know if you probably knew this already, Charmaine, but I had no clue that, it extended into that. So when I hear people saying I could never become vegan, I think what they really mean to say is, oh, I would struggle to give up meat, because, you could very easily switch your toiletries, or they have vegan leather now for shoes and bags and stuff. So I think it's crazy when you really make that distinction between, veganism doesn't necessarily have to do with health. It just has to do with saying no to any kind of animal products. But I mean, yeah, I just thought that was something that blew my mind. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, and I think you brought up about resistance when it comes to people giving up meat, or just people thinking about, oh my gosh, like vegan is such a strict lifestyle, or like, that's what comes into most people's mind. And that's why I like to use the word plant-based, because even with the people that we work with, right, like to help them reverse type 2 diabetes with a plant-based diet, we don't require them to be 100% vegan, right? Like we help them build a system, because I think I would rather people, maybe they don't do 100% plant-based, but still eat their diet mostly based on plants, so that they can still reap the benefits of the whole foods plant-based lifestyle, rather than just about perfection, because I think that turns a lot of people off, and that oftentimes it's well-meaning but it does the opposite. So I think the big message I want to send out there is that you can do a plant-based diet without being 100% plant-based, or you can reverse type 2 diabetes with a plant-based diet without being perfect, and still be able to enjoy what you want every once in a while, right? It's about the big picture. So anyways, I just wanted to bring that up, because I do see a lot of resistance in people, and I think having flexibility oftentimes can encourage people to give it a go and give it a try.
100%. And I think, you know, when you hear the words, for example, like I'm plant-based or I'm vegan or I'm keto, whatever, people like labels because they want to feel like they belong to a group. But that can be very intimidating for some people. Like you said, some people will be put off by saying, oh yeah, you know, a plant-based diet. But I think it's so important, as you said, it's about the progress that you make in that direction. So you've seen this so many times that just in switching 1 or 2 meals a day out of, let's say, your 3 meals, you can make fantastic progress. It's not about being 100% perfect. And when I first switched to this lifestyle, I think that's something I struggled with a lot, because I wanted my identity to be within the label. I didn't want to feel like an outsider to like the group almost, because enjoyed an occasional treat. So what my boyfriend and I decided was that we were going to tell, if people asked us, you know, oh, what kind of diet do you follow, that we would call it primarily plant-based, because first and foremost, like the majority of our diet consists of plant-based whole foods, right? But, you know, I've definitely had cake that has like egg in it or something. It's difficult to completely cut all these things out, and giving yourself that permission to have that flexibility, I think, is such an important part of building this into a long-term kind of system for yourself and lifestyle. So that's what I call myself. I say I'm primarily plant-based.
Yeah, I love that. It's funny because I feel like primarily is such a proper word. I usually say mostly, but I definitely agree with what you're saying, is that, you know, it's hard for most people to completely cut out things. And I think just adding flexibility in there is definitely really beneficial. And I agree with, you know, the labels. You know, I think we're all about like labels now. And I've seen it in the vegan community a lot, where, you know, if someone does something that doesn't align with other people's value, you know, they get a lot of backlash in that community. And I think, why? You know,
Yes.
it's just, it's hard sometimes. But anyways, that's another topic for another day.
Amazing. So next question. So in terms of being plant-based, you know, I think there's this idea that a lot of people have that being plant-based or having a whole food plant-based diet is boring, you know, that like you eat the same thing every day, or you only have like 5 foods that you can eat. What would you want to say to someone who says that it's boring?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say the best thing to do when it comes to thinking about, okay, plant-based is boring, because usually you just think about carrots and celery and like salads. That's what most people think about. But if you look around, and we're very lucky, because I think nowadays we have a lot more plant-based options, where there's like plant-based mock meat. Not saying that all of them are healthy, but there's definitely a lot more options for us. Even going to restaurants, there's a lot more options. So I would say, you know, this kind of ties into what we're going to talk about next, but I think a lot of times it's best to learn to make things your own. Let's say if you're used to Mexican cuisine, I actually just had someone commented on my TikTok video, like, what about Mexican cuisine? Any cuisine, you can really make it plant-based, make it your own. What are you used to eating? And that's usually my first question with people who get on a consult with me is like, what do you love to eat? You know, you don't have to feel guilty about telling me that you love Italian food or you love Chinese food. You know, I think food is very, very close to us. You know, it's very close to our culture, it's very close to our daily lives, and it's personal sometimes. And so I think it's very important to make your own and think about what are the foods that you do enjoy. Is it pizza? Is it pasta? Is it burger? Is it sushi? Is it tacos? Any food can be made whole foods, plant-based. Anything can be made healthy in the healthier version. Not saying that you have to like do a lettuce wrap burger. You know, I don't believe in that. I believe you still need your, you know, carbohydrates, you still, you know, need your protein, but anything can be made healthy. So I think just making it your own will help you make your meals less boring. And even just trying to like go on YouTube, go on Pinterest, finding new ideas and maybe trying like one recipe a week. I think just gaining more of the recipe vocabulary in your cooking habits, I think that will help you make more delicious meals as well. And I think these things will help you, you know, making it your own will help you make a long-term success as well, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think the idea that a plant-based diet or a whole foods diet is boring, I think I've definitely thought that in the past. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to lie to anyone. I have definitely been in that school of thought at one point in time. And when I look back at that now, because I can look back at that now, I realized because I actually wasn't looking for it to not be something boring. I wasn't trying to make it fun or an interesting idea because I didn't have the reasons behind me for why I wanted to do it in the first place. Like I didn't have that drive to make that change yet. But if you go to the supermarkets nowadays, there are like dedicated aisles to being on this lifestyle. Like I was at one of my local supermarkets this morning with my sister, and they had the largest aisle of plant-based like meat alternatives and pre-marinated tofus and falafel that you can buy and different dips and stuff, and just so many choices that I felt spoilt for choice. Like there was a massive whole like double-sided aisle dedicated for my specific lifestyle. And it's like, if I didn't go in with the purpose of actually looking for something interesting to try, I wouldn't have gone there. I would have just thought that I was restricted to like the produce aisle, for example, you know. And I think knowing that you have those options, it gives you a lot more flexibility in your plant-based lifestyle, where you can, for example, they have like, I'm half Lebanese, and they have a like mock meat shawarma, which is like a really like big thing for Lebanese people. And I was looking at it and I was like, this is something I can eat. Like the nutritional breakdown is good with me. I'm happy to have this. And I'm like, cool, I can get a whole wheat wrap and I can make myself my own version, right? So, and that's something I've grown up eating that gives me comfort, that I enjoy. It's nostalgic. It's, you know, it feels like home. And you have to find ways, like you said, to continue to enjoy the foods that you like, that you enjoy. Food is a pleasure in life. It is something to be enjoyed. It's definitely something to be enjoyed. But like I said, you try to make it go with your lifestyle. So I definitely think there's a lot more choices now, especially because plant-based eating, like veganism, is a lot more trendy in a way than it was a while back. You know, I didn't know that many people who were plant-based or vegan 5 years ago, but I feel like all my friends eat this way now. And it's not because I've convinced them to do it. It's just changing. I think people are a lot more aware of what they eat and the power of what they eat and how they eat. So I definitely think, like you said, trying to make it your own, trying to enjoy the foods that you've historically enjoyed, and just to be creative and kind of inquisitive with it. Like you have no idea how many choices are out there. Like I guarantee everyone, you will be so surprised if you just go to your supermarket and you explicitly try look for plant-based options. You'll be so impressed with what you find. Like it can be shocking sometimes.
Yeah, I love absolutely what you're talking about in just having different options into your own culture, especially, and when I think about different cuisines, different culture, there's a lot of plant-based foods that's within the foods that you're already eating. For example, with Mexican cuisine, I can speak to that because my husband's Mexican and I work with a lot of people that are Latinos. But there's a lot of things like nopales, there's things like beans, lentil soup, corn tortillas. They're all really, really healthy for you. They're all whole grain. And even I think about Asian food, there's a lot of vegetables in Asian foods that we eat. We always have to have a dish of vegetables in our meal. Or Italian food, right? Like they use a lot of grains, they use a lot of vegetables in their cooking as well. So I think when you really open your eyes and think about, okay, what are the foods that I can make within my culture that's plant-based, and starting from that, I think that will be super powerful. And I forgot to mention about this, but this has to do with something not doing 100% plant-based, is there's these places called blue zones, and those are the people that live the longest. So what they found, the common thing between them is that they actually all eat very little meat, and they eat a very high carbohydrate diet, but they have a really low rates of disease and they live longer, which is very interesting. And one of the populations, they call it, what is it called? They call them centenarians. That means
Yeah.
they live over 100 years old. And one of the population is the Okinawans, and they eat mostly plant-based, they eat mostly vegetarian, and they're still eating meat. Let's say every Lunar New Year or during the holidays, they'll eat like a rabbit and they'll like make it into a dish, or like they'll use very little dried fish here and there. And so it's very interesting because they're not doing 100% plant-based, but they still are gaining a lot of benefits from the plant-based foods. And I know has something to do with what we talked about earlier, but it also is taking a look at different cultures. There's people in Italy that has the blue zone. There's people here in America, in Loma Linda, where not Loma Linda, is it Loma Linda? Where the Seventh-day Adventists are. They have a large population of people that live over 100 years old. So it's definitely very, very exciting to see that, there's different culture doing this and still being able to thrive. So I just wanted to throw that in.
I love that. And I've done quite a bit of reading as well on blue zones, because I think it's just really, really fascinating. And there are like several groups that are classified as part of like a blue zone across the Mediterranean. And it's like you say, like they have a primarily plant-based and whole food diet, but they still enjoy occasional animal protein, or they consume olive oil. And I think there's a lot of research that points to like distinguishing the types of fat that is consumed in those populations versus the types of fat, for example, in like the standard American diet, and like really pointing to the distinction there as well as the preventative and protective impact of whole foods as a whole, as well as the reduction in certain types of fat. So I think that's super amazing. And it's great for people to hear, because when you hear like the populations of people that live the longest, the areas of the world where people live beyond 100, that like they're mostly plant-based, but they still have occasional meat and stuff. I think that gives people hope that like, oh, I don't have to, give up absolutely everything. I can still have these things in moderation and really enjoy them and make it into something special. I think that's just amazing to look into. So definitely encourage anyone listening to like check that out, because I think it is really, really fascinating to see that. So yeah, I'm getting carried away. I get excited.
I love that. I get excited.
Yeah. So we said a little bit about this before, but like one of the questions that we had planned next was, why do you think some people find it hard to kind of stick to being plant-based? And what would you say is the key or one of the most important things at trying to make this lifestyle a long-term thing and to feel like you're successful on it?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say two things. One is kind of like what we talked about, into making this lifestyle your own, to what you're used to eating, right? I think a lot of times people see other people or like influencers like, oh, doing this meal. Let's say if someone is used to like Latino cuisines and they see this influencer eating salads all the time, and they really are inspired to eat healthy, but then they don't like eating salads all the time. And I think that is what usually turns people off, is, I'm not used to that. That's not a food that I enjoy, or that's not a food that I'm familiar with. And so I think it's so important to find foods that you already eat, that you already love, and really making it plant-based, right? So instead of eating salads all the time, you can do like a plant-based ceviche, or you can do bean tacos instead, or lentil tacos, just to really make it your own. And also, I think one of the things that will help is always finding new recipes. that you will be excited about, not like a salad that you don't like, right? Like always finding new recipes that you will love. I think that is key as well, because I think a lot of times people will get bored eating the same foods over and over again. Some people like that. I certainly am one of those people. I don't mind eating the same foods again and again. But, you know, my husband, he loves finding new recipes, loves trying new things. And so I think that will also really help people to really make this lifelong if they always have something new that they can try, right? And not make it boring. And third thing, I know I said two things, but third thing is that really try to not be hard on yourself, even if you don't eat 100% plant-based, you know, really building a system where you allow yourself to enjoy other foods that aren't plant-based every once in a while. And I think I realized how much flexibility can help you make this lifestyle sustainable. So that's what I would say about really trying to make this long term.
Yeah, I love everything that you've said, and I totally agree with like your 3 points. I definitely think making it your own is probably like the most important thing, because you have to make it work for you, and you have to define what your system and what the flexibility means to you. So if being 70% plant-based, for example, is your best, it's the best that you can commit to without feeling overly restricted or overwhelmed, then that 70% is actually your 100%, right? So I think not being harsh on yourself, like you said, I think is super, super important. But also trying to teach yourself, I'll add one extra, also trying to teach yourself or re-teach yourself how to cook as someone who is plant-based. I think that's something that people struggle with so much, especially if you're trying to make this lifestyle change later on in life. You've spent most of your life learning how to prepare food around animal protein or with animal fat, using butter or oil and stuff like that, you know? So really trying to learn how to cook dishes as someone who is primarily plant-based, learning how to recreate dishes that you've historically enjoyed, but as a plant-based individual, so making them plant-based, and in that you are making it your own, but to really give yourself the permission to be creative and to experiment. And sometimes it's going to go wrong. Like I've definitely made or tried, because it was not successful, but I've definitely tried to replicate dishes that I used to have when I ate meat as someone who's plant-based, and sometimes they're terrible, sometimes they don't taste good. Force myself to eat it because I don't like wasting food, but sometimes it's gone beautifully well, and I'm pleasantly surprised, and I'll get my sister, my mom, my boyfriend, whoever's around to try it, and they'll be like, whoa, what is this? And I'm like, it's my version of whatever. And
I love it.
Yeah, you just have to have fun with it and try new things, like you said, and relearn how to cook, but as a plant-based individual. I feel like that's where people get stuck, and kind of abandoning the idea that like your meal is only complete if there's like a big piece of protein on it, which I think a lot of us have grown up kind of thinking that way. So kind of leaving that behind you and then just moving forward with the plant-based life with an open mind.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think that is definitely very important in learning, just experimenting with cooking and not getting frustrated with yourself because it's new. And I always like to say it's kind of like learning to drive, right? Like you learning to make all these foods is kind of like learning how to drive. I don't know why, but it was really hard for me, you know, to learn how to drive. I think I started learning till like I'm 22. I didn't learn like before. So I started learning when I'm 22. So it was like pretty hard. And then you have to think about everything. You have to think about like braking smoothly. You have to think about like looking in the rearview mirror. There's a lot of things that you have to think about. And it was just not natural at first. But then now I drive, it's almost like second nature. I don't think about those things anymore, right? I mean, of course I still look in the mirror, but it just comes natural to me, right? So I think it's the same thing when it comes to transitioning your lifestyle to a plant-based diet. Like I think just being patient with yourself, being kind to yourself, I think those are important aspects to think about as well.
Totally agree. Totally agree. I hope you still look in the rearview mirror, Charmaine, when you're driving. Everyone beware of Charmaine on the road.
I know. Be careful. Yeah, I do. I'm very careful.
Disclaimer. Okay. Cool. So I think we have two more questions.
Mhm.
So, okay, this is a good one. This is a really good one. So, would you say, okay, so I think there's we've spoken a lot about, a plant-based diet and vegan diets, and what would you say the relationship is between, a whole food plant-based diet and reversing insulin resistance and diabetes? What is the relationship between that diet, and can the results that you get on that diet be achieved with other diets, or what is special about this kind of lifestyle and diet when we're talking about diabetes?
Yeah, absolutely. So whole foods plant-based is the method that I use to help people reverse type 2 diabetes. And the reason why I, use this method is because it has an emphasis on whole and processed foods. And those are the foods that has the most nutrients, that has the most fiber, and will help you reverse type 2 diabetes the most. However, people have to make the distinction is that not every healthy foods equals to reversing insulin resistance, because reversing insulin resistance requires special attention into the different kinds of foods that you're eating. Even if something is healthy, it doesn't necessarily equal to helping you reverse insulin resistance. So for example, avocado is super healthy, nuts, seeds, they're super healthy. However, having them in a large amount is not the best for reversing insulin resistance, because our goal here to reverse insulin resistance is to lower the fat. So if you're eating like a bag of nuts, or you're turning to things like avocado and nuts because they're low in carbs, that actually does the opposite. And so I think my emphasis on doing a whole foods plant-based lifestyle is doing a low fat whole food plant-based lifestyle to help people reverse their insulin resistance. And usually they'll be able to eat more healthy carbohydrates and still have lowered blood sugar or normal blood sugar while they're on this lifestyle. And then little by little, they can add more like healthy fats into their meals. So that's usually how I help people reverse type 2 diabetes. However, a lot of people do come from different eating backgrounds as well. So it's hard to I think the thing is, when it comes to nutrition and food, and that's why I do what I do, is everybody is different when it comes to their background. Some people may come from a low carb background, right? And so they need personalized adjusting in their meals to help them transition to a high carb, low fat plant-based lifestyle. Or some people, they may need help with finding out what foods trigger their blood sugar to spike, or finding out what are the foods that may not be most helpful for them in having a more balanced blood sugar. So there's a lot of, how to say, nuances? How do you pronounce it? Okay.
Nuance.
What is it?
Nuance.
Yes, nuance. For those of you who don't know, my first language is actually not English, so forgive me when I say weird stuff. Sometimes I can't think of the words to do that. But yeah, the nuance, there's a lot of nuances to this lifestyle, and everybody is different. So I would say, when you do a whole foods plant-based lifestyle, give it a try, and just don't give up just because one way isn't working for you. There's always different solutions and different tweaks that you can make to make this work for you. Does that make sense?
100%. And obviously, I'm going to advocate for what you do, for what we do here, because I believe in it. I know that scientifically it's sound. And well, I see the results in people, but I've also seen the results in myself. And I know you, and I know that, when a client comes to you, when they come into the program, there is so much focus on the individual, on their background, on where they've come from. And there's so much power to your background, your story, why you're here, giving a person the opportunity to share this at the starting line, right? So you can have complete understanding for where they've come from. You try your best to understand what they've been through, where they've been. I think this is so important. And this is something that one of the many reasons why I love working with you so much is because, unfortunately, a lot of the time, people like me who live with diabetes don't get treated like an individual. You get treated like a generalized statistic, or like one of the many. And your story, your background is not given the acknowledgement and power that it needs. And I think that is just such an important thing. And I think, well, I don't think you would be surprised because I think you see this, but I think people in general would be surprised how important it is for an individual to feel like they're being listened to in that moment. That's just me giving you love, Charmaine. But I think it is really, really important. And you know, the distinction that you've made with low fat plant-based as well, like if there's anybody who's, you know, listening to this podcast, to listening to this conversation, if you've made it here, and I want to shout out to you, if you have ever been told by a doctor or somebody to go snack on almonds or something, like, I mean, I know that's something that I have been told before, and I spent years of my life like sitting there snacking on almonds and eating cheese, like a cheese stick as a snack or something. And in the moment that I had like 5 grams of carbs, my blood sugars would be through the roof. And I mean, there's a very sound explanation as to why that is the case. And when you look deeper into that, what we're saying here, what we're advocating with this lifestyle makes so much sense. And I can truly promise, you know, that if you just try it out, like, you can have any degree of skepticism, you can have your doubts, but what do you lose trying for 2-3 weeks trying to make it work? If you don't see progress, like, DM me, have a chat with me. But I urge you to just give it a go, and I feel very strongly that you'll be pleasantly surprised.
Oh, thank you for your love. And I think that I feel so lucky just to have you on board as well, because I think you are someone that really relates to just the day-to-day. You know, you've been told to snack on cheese, you've been told to have almonds. And, I think that's definitely someone a lot of people can relate to, and just you advocating for them to change, and you advocating for them to find a way that can actually help them solve the root cause of the problem. I'm just super lucky to have you too, Galia. And I want to be the one to ask the last question. What would you say your experience is when you experimented with different lifestyles of plant-based eating? Because you told me before you tried plant-based as well, and I can share after you share, but I personally had different experiences with the plant-based lifestyle. But what would you say what your experiences are, and what are the differences that you see in terms of how you feel, and just the benefits of it as well?
Yeah, totally. And I think, just like as a disclaimer, I think whenever you make a lifestyle change, or whenever you try out a diet, so many of us do it without really knowing any theory or actual deeper understanding about the diet and like what the diet is supposed to help us with or do for us. And when I first started experimenting with diets, like, I'm not going to pretend like I'm older, I'm still very young, I'm 23, but I mean, I've been experimenting with how I eat since I was a teenager, like most girls, young girls do, and most young women do, right? So the start of me experimenting with different diets was like wanting to lose weight, and I didn't understand anything about nutrition, I didn't understand anything about energy balance. And I think when I first started, my first kind of test run with a plant-based diet was wanting to lose weight, and I can tell you I definitely didn't eat enough. Obviously I wanted to lose weight, so I was in a calorie deficit, but it was just so drastic that I ended up completely messing up my metabolism. And I think that was like, it was not sustainable, it was not healthy, it was not balanced, it was not going to be a long-term solution. And I think that's something that a lot of people relate to when they try a plant-based diet. They don't have the information on how to do it in a kind of sustainable and balanced way. So they end up eating too little, like only leaves, only like water and like a couple of micronutrients here and there, and like no calories to sustain them. You end up grumpy, starving, putting too much stress on your body that causes so many other problems. And then you would probably gain the weight that you lost all back. And that's what happened to me. And that was like my first kind of trial run. Then I got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and the counsel that I got was like, don't eat carbs, like don't eat any carbs. So I was eating like only meat, only fats, like lettuce, I guess. Like that was my diet. And that didn't really work well for me for long. My levels were always super, super high, like 250 plus. My A1C went up to 12%, even though I was on an insulin pump, which was a nightmare. And I just continued to gain weight. So then I was like, cool, I need to find something that actually works, because I don't feel right. Like, I don't feel well in my body. I'm starting to get complications. I'm tired. I'm lethargic. Like, I just don't feel like this is not living. This is not what living is supposed to feel like. And I'm maybe 20 at the time that this happens. And I'm like, how can I be 20 years old? And I feel like I'm stuck in the body of like an 80-year-old woman. Like, something is not right here. I started to do research. Like, I was finishing my undergrad, and part of my undergrad involved like nutritional and biochemistry kind of modules. And I started to kind of go deeper into it. I was like, cool, I think this is what I need to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. And I put a lot of emphasis on trying to create the most balanced diet that I could for myself. That is to say, my version of balance still involves, like, my version of balance has flexibility in it, because I need that flexibility in my life. But I think the biggest thing from my experience was there is a lot of power in the understanding behind how to do things in a, sustainable ways. So again, something that we, I think, pride ourselves on in this program is empowering you as an individual with education on why are you eating the things that you're eating? Why are you doing what you're doing here? Why are you having these food groups? What do these food groups give you? Why is it important that you include this in your diet? Why is it that you can't just live on lettuce? All of these things. And I think where people trip up when they're experimenting with plant-based eating is they don't have that information. They don't fully comprehend why, or like maybe on some level, but maybe you don't know the extent as to like why just having salads is not going to work, right? So I think the information was so important for me in being able to actually do this long term, and to feel like I can do this long term without feeling like I'm just eating celery, carrots, and lettuce, right? And I mean, benefits wise, like I feel a lot better. Like my A1C has been the lowest and most stable that it's been since I became diabetic. That doesn't mean that it's still like, it doesn't mean it's easy, right? Like living with type 1 is difficult, but I think it offsets a lot of the struggles that I know I would be facing were I not on this kind of a lifestyle, if that makes sense. I think I've spoken too much.
No, don't say that. No, I love that. I think it's amazing just to hear your journey as well into finding what works for you. And I think even just the step to, I had a conversation with the client like a couple of days ago, but I told him I think that people should listen to their intuition when it comes to their body. If you don't feel right on a lifestyle, if you feel lethargic, if you feel like you have cravings all the time, like something has to change. And I think a lot of times we give so much power to other people or what social media says or what non-registered dietitians, we give so much power to them, but we, oftentimes, like how you felt, you strongly felt like this wasn't for you. And I think it's great that you listen to that intuition and you slowly found something else. And now that you're here in the whole food plant-based realm and that you're able to thrive on this lifestyle. So that's really, really awesome that you shared that. I love that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. And I love what you've said about, really listening to like your body. And I definitely believe in that so much. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of us, like, it's not that we don't know how to listen to our bodies, it's that we stop listening, and we kind of like the sounds of what our body is trying to tell us become muffled. We don't really understand what it's asking us to do, but like our body is an incredible machine, and if your body is telling you something, like there's a reason why it's telling you something. So just stopping and giving yourself the permission to just really be like, okay, what's going on? What am I feeling right now? I don't think enough people ask themselves like what they're feeling or how they're really feeling, and then trying to kind of troubleshoot that.
I love that. And I think even just, I have tried different ways of plant-based eating, and it's funny because it was like a few years ago that I tried doing vegan, and I actually gained a lot of weight doing vegan because I didn't know what to do. And that's the thing. Plant-based or doing vegan doesn't necessarily mean that it's healthy, but I like had a lot of vegan junk food, or had a lot of just processed foods. And then my friend, she sent me a picture that we took a few years ago, and I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, I know that God made me beautiful, but I was like, oh my gosh, like I was so chubby back then. But anyways, that's another story for another time. But I think just even I share people's frustration when it comes to finding different diets that don't work or just doesn't align with you. And I think it's definitely frustrating in those times, but I want to, end this podcast with saying a lot of times those things, right? Like I don't want to say failure, but the resistance in the past, or just maybe when you weren't successful in the past, I think they build up as limiting beliefs, right? Like they make you think that there's nothing that will work, right? You've tried everything and nothing works. And I've heard that a lot with people that have not tried whole foods plant-based before, and they told me they tried everything, it doesn't work, and they've lost hope. But I think just I want to, share with you, whoever is listening to this podcast, is just give this a go. Just try it. What will happen, right? What will the worst happen, right? Give this a go, because this may possibly be able to change your life. If it doesn't, then, you tried it and right? But if it does, how amazing will that be, where you're able to reverse your insulin resistance, you're able to lose weight, you're able to reverse your type 2 diabetes, get off medications, right? Just imagine that and just know that, okay, like you don't have much to lose anyways, right? You've already tried a lot of things, so there's not much to lose anyways. Then, why not give this a try? Because this might probably change the rest of your life and allow you to do way much more in life, allow you to almost have a second chance at life. So I just wanted to add that on.
I love that. And I totally, agree with that. I think, we each have our respective journey, and we each have moments where we feel like, okay, I failed, or this isn't working, or you feel defeated, but like, you can't let it be the end of the journey. You have to take it as, okay, I need to find what's going to work for me. And like you said, there's literally no harm in trying. If it doesn't work, like I said, I'm so confident it will. You send me a message, DM me. But I feel super, super confident that if you just allow yourself to be vulnerable, like one more time, right? And you just give yourself the permission to do it, but to really do it, to really give it your all. I'm so confident that this will work for you. And I'm speaking, not just from what I've seen, right? I'm saying from my personal experience with this as well, as someone who's been through similar struggles, who's felt probably very similar to how you might be feeling. You have nothing to lose. All you have is something to gain.
I love that. Definitely. And yeah, so, for those of you who are listening, if you want to give this a go, you can message us on Instagram at Reversing on Plants. You can message us reverse, or like I need help, or where can people find you, Galia?
I haven't been very active on Instagram, but if you message me, I'll always answer. So I'm on Instagram as @type101 with Galia.
Amazing. And also, we have always different podcasts that's coming out. So you can also message us what topics you'd like to hear on this podcast. And if you can do us a favor, if you can give us a 5-star rating so that more people can find this podcast on reversing type 2 diabetes, so more people can learn the benefits of this lifestyle, that would be amazing. That would mean a lot to us as well. And if you're interested in learning more resource, or working with us, or on our YouTube or free course, we have a lot of different resources. So we do have a website. It's reversingt2diabetes.org. So make sure you check that out. And yeah, do you have anything else that you'd like to add on, Galia, in the end?
No, I don't think so. Just thank you for, sticking with us to the end of the episode. And we hope to hear from you guys joining us, or, feel free to message us, feel free to tag us on Instagram. Feel free to reach out. We're always going to be there to answer any questions or anything.
Absolutely. Oh, talking about bearing with us, I apologize if you guys heard the ding dings from my messages. I turned it off. I was like, stop texting right now. So I apologize for that. It will not happen next time, hopefully. But thank you guys for listening to this episode. And if you want to work with us, you can join our Reversing Type 2 Diabetes program, and we will be excited to have you on board. And have a great day, everyone. We will talk to you guys soon. Bye. Thank you so much for listening in to this podcast. I appreciate your time and your attention. If you want to have more resources in reversing diabetes with a plant-based diet, there is a free course. You can find them in the description. or in the show link. And you can also follow me at Reversing on Plants on TikTok or Instagram, and subscribe to my channel on YouTube as well. Or if you would like to work with me one-on-one, then you can book a call with my team to see if you're a great fit and get started on this journey of reversing type 2 diabetes. Have a great day, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good one.